But there is someone else who has been trending on Twitter again. He hasn't been no platformed or cancelled just yet, and it's Noam Chomsky.
Noam Chomsky,
Noam Chomsky.
The darling of left-wing intellectuals.
Yes, the famous anarcho-syndicalist, which is kind of ironic given what we're discussing. But he's been trending on Twitter again, and for good reason. And you may recall some time ago in the summer that Professor Chomsky made his position on anti-vaxxers pretty clear. In short, saying, which is covered in The Independent here, that those who opt against vaccinations, irrespective of their reasons, should be all but officially ostracised from society. The Independent,
it's very inclusive.
Very inclusive. The Independent reported
Chomsky
to have said that while he disagreed with the policy of mandatory vaccines, that is, he thought those who refused jabs should isolate because they become a danger to the community.
Did he explain how?
Not really, no.
Right. Okay, well, that's a bizarre statement.
Yeah, he does elaborate, but I'm going to withhold on how he elaborates for the sake of argument for now. But he says that people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is not to force them, but rather to insist that they be isolated.
So ostracism rather than just forced vaccination.
Yeah.
But as if ostracism isn't a form of coercion in this context.
Yes, which is exactly what he himself would have argued about several decades ago.
Yeah.
But this isn't his mature position. He's actually proceeded to go slightly further than this.
Right.
Going as far as to claim that vaccine mandates should be upheld, even if it leads to starvations.
What?
Yes. So
I love the mask coming fully off here.
Yes. That's
libertarian communist my ass.
Yes. So if we could move to the first video clip, which is this one. Yep. We will see what he says.
When you talk about folks having the freedom to, separate if they don't want to abide by these vaccine mandates, what would that look like on a practical level? Does that mean that folks need to just stay home and have like groceries delivered to them? Does it mean like separated communities of folks who are unvaccinated, or just, how do you think this would practically play out?
Same way as with people who say that I don't want to accept traffic rules. I suppose there were people who said it's an attack on my liberty to make me stop at a red light. It's government overreach. We don't want the state to have that power over my private life. Well, such people they should have the decency to remove themselves from the community. If they refuse to do that, then measures have to be taken to safeguard the community from them. Then comes the practical question that you ask, how can we get food to them? Well, that's actually their problem. Of course, if they really become destitute, then yes, you'd have to move in with some measure to secure their survival, just as you do with people in jail, for example. But that's really not the issue.
So,
Noam Chomsky reporting from some cave in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with him?
I don't.
Well, he's 90, isn't he? So
he is, 92, 93, something like that. But yeah, he basically said, how are people going to eat? That's their problem. That's their problem for not towing the state's line.
Have you ever read Peter Kropotkin?
I've not.
Right. So Kropotkin was a 19th century Russian anarchist communist, right? And he wrote, he wrote a series of articles that were compiled into what is a book called The Conquest of Bread. And this is what BreadTube call themselves. They name themselves after.
Right.
So he's like a kind of like anarcho-communist godfather of the left. And Chomsky has arrived at his position when he's addressing the criticism, well, what if people just don't really want to work on the communes and in the society? What happens then? And Kropotkin's like, well, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But people keep pressing on it. He's like, well, I mean, if that happens, we'll just have to ostracize them. We'll just have to force them to leave, They'll just be forced to go. And it's like, but you intend a world system of, international proletarian uprising. Where could they go? Were they going to just go to the capitalist countries or something?
Yeah.
So Kropotkin and Chomsky have harmonized at this point we'll just have to ostracize those wrong thinkers we don't like.
Yes, pretty much. Hunger, he's always kind of assessed things from a very moralistic position, Chomsky. And you can extend that to his argument in favour of free speech of late, given that it's becoming more and more at his expense may have
Yeah.
something more to do with that. But hunger on moral grounds is something that Chomsky himself has constantly said should never be used as a tool for political coercion. I think the majority of moral people would argue for that point. But on this occasion, he's quite literally saying that it's their problem that the anti-vax can't get food, and that it's to their detriment that they don't want to toe the line that the state is trying to push onto them.
I mean, it just seems like a total reversal. Because I've watched enough Chomsky lectures to know that he's totally against this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Like, he's normally, I mean, libertarian-ish, you know, he normally doesn't like state intervention or oppression.
I mean, up to this point, he's been one of the most consistent anti-authoritarian speakers, to his credit. I almost find myself sympathising with him on a lot of principles. He's thrown all of that into the fire here.
That's why I don't hate Chomsky, because he might be bonkers, but like, he's not evil, or at least I didn't think he was evil.
No, but this has got to be the most misguided thing he's ever said, because as sinister as this comes across, he's missing out on a few things that are really obvious as well. And maybe I'm just being thick and I'm missing something here.
Okay,
but you know this link between the anti-vaxxers and Trump support. Yeah. Well, if that's true, then many of those he's claiming that deserve to starve inadvertently have hold over the means of production when it comes to food. They're farmers, aren't they?
A lot of them will be, yeah.
A lot of them will be farmers. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how this is going to work out in practice. Wouldn't it be a matter of the distributors refusing to cooperate with them, given that they could be seen as a threat, a potential threat of spreading the virus to the supermarkets through the food, or something possibly, like that?
But possibly. But I'm more interested at the idea that and I agree that there probably is a large partisan divide in America over vaccine uptake rates. And so it's hard not to see this as just a partisan attack, right? It looks like him being like, well, you know, the people who are going to be ostracized are people who are basically right-wingers.
Yeah.
You know?
But this interference with the supply chains surely is going to have more of a knock-on effect for those who are more inclined to take the vaccine than those who are not, given that, the producers could say, fine, we'll just keep our food.
Well, they absolutely could. And yes, that's the case. But you remember, Chomsky is guilty, as all socialists are, of systemic thought. So they don't look at society as being made up of various groups that in ways are kind of autonomous and then interact across boundaries with one another. So he's looking at the position of the sort of deified state, which is like, well, the state will just take that and say, we'll do that, take that, and it will ostracize those people, and everything will be perfect. You know, and it's like, yeah, but that's not how it will work, because you'll get lots of, you know, farmers who own their land saying, get bent, you know, I'm going to feed unvaccinated people and not vaccinated people, and so you guys in the cities, not my problem.
Yeah, and this is quite literally the system that we have.
Yeah.
So he's quite, I mean, the fact that he renders the practical implications as secondary, I'm afraid, is, well, I think, a reflection of everything that you have just alluded to.
Yeah.
He's appealing to a state that does not exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's always the socialist way, though, isn't it? You know, it's assumed that the state is some sort of deity that hovers over society, just intervening as God answers prayers. You know, like that's how they view it. Yeah,
but it's not doing anything for those who genuinely believe in socialism for those reasons, because they're going to go without food ultimately. Yeah. Well, yes, if Chomsky got his way, you would think he'd at least be sympathetic to those people, but it doesn't seem to have crossed his mind. But anyway. This clip has led to another video resurfacing, the video that The Independent were discussing. And when Chomsky was being interviewed by Kurtz from Theories of Everything, and I believe it's this one here.
Right, okay.
Okay, we'll move on to question 33, the next one. Air on again. What are your thoughts on mandating vaccines?
Well, it's a mixed story. I think people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is not to force them to, but rather to insist that they be isolated. If people decide, I am willing to be a danger to the community by refusing a vaccine, they should then say, well, I also have the decency to isolate myself. Okay, I don't want a vaccine, but I don't have the right to run around harming people. That should be a convention Enforcing is a different question. It should be understood, and we should try to get it to be understood. If it really reaches the point where they are severely endangering people, then of course you have to do something about it. So if smallpox turns out to become rampant again, and some people are insisting on running around the public places where they might have smallpox, well, you've got to do something about it.
That's amazing. Yeah, coronavirus is smallpox. But B, it kind of presupposes that vaccines aren't effective.
Yeah.
How could they be a danger to the vaccinated if the vaccines work? No.
Well, yes, exactly.
And it seems that the vaccines do have some sort of prophylactic effect in protecting people from coronavirus, as you would expect. It is a vaccine.
Yeah.
So why not just let people make their own decisions?
Well, exactly. But I actually think it's a little bit. I don't want to criticise Professor Chomsky too much, but it almost strikes me as in bad faith slightly to talk about COVID and smallpox as if they're equally as bad as one another.
Oh, it's absurd.
I mean, let's just. I mean, I've done some research into this. The mortality rate of smallpox is 30%. To COVID, that's 3.4%. I mean, this is outright fear mongering, and on top of that, smallpox, I'm pretty sure is far more contagious as well. I mean, if COVID's mortality rate was far higher,
if it was 10 times higher, maybe I'd agree with him.
Yeah, and then that would justify perhaps more state coercion. And I think that the anti-vax movement would probably amount to far less, because a lot of these people just ultimately just want their freedoms back, because they don't think ultimately the coercive force that's currently in place justifies the level of the threat. No. And they think that something broader like a broader strategy might be at play here.
Absolutely.
They're not completely wrong.
No.
I mean, Neil Oliver on an absolutely outstanding segment a few weeks ago on GB News basically said that we are sleepwalking into this, almost finding comfort in hysteria. And he said that we know when we were all panicking about fuel, that we almost seem to find some sort of solitude in panicking over things. And it's becoming increasingly hard to resist conspiracy theories because the government seems to be doing everything possible. The media are mobilising around it to spread this panic.
Well, this was what Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Führer, said the other day.
Führer.
Well, I mean it. She's a Nazi. She's the joyously creating two tiers of citizens. But she said that the vaccine is our armour against COVID. It's like, well, I mean, it's got a protective effect, no doubt, but it's not perfect. And in the UK, we went through this yesterday, 1,000 people in the last week or something had died of COVID who had been vaccinated, and 500 people who were unvaccinated had died. Now, that's not too surprising, given how 70% of the population has had two vaccines at this point. So, but the point is, it's not an infallible protection, but she was presenting it entirely in a one-sided narrative, saying, oh, well, you will be safe if you have the vaccine, you will not be safe if you don't have the vaccine. It's like, that's not true. I haven't had the vaccine, I've had COVID. So I have COVID antibodies in me, whereas people who've had the vaccine can die from it and catch it and spread it, as Boris pointed out. So it's amazing that Chomsky has bought into this kind of narrative where it's like the unvaccinated are threatening the vaccinated. No, the vaccinated can spread the virus and they can die from the virus, and the unvaccinated don't have to. It's a 3% mortality rate. Yeah. So 97% chance of surviving the virus.
Yeah, but I mean, it's especially disappointing as well that there is this assumption that those who opt not to take the vaccine are consciously making themselves a danger to others when they know this is not true.
Yeah, and then to put it on them that they are essentially going around stabbing them or something. Yeah. They're basically saying you're deliberately inflicting harm on people around you. It's like, that's not true.
No, it's not at all. I mean, for a start, it's actually unfair. I know this is going to sound extraordinary, but it's unfair against the genuinely delusional. No, as in some people genuinely believe that this is Bill Gates' master plan to inject us all with microchips. We all know that's nonsense because they've done that already with the phones we have, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's in your pocket. But they don't need to inject you with anything.
But no, in the eyes of Jacinda Ardern, and sadly it seems Noam Chomsky, these people who refuse to take the vaccine are bad actors, end of story. Yeah. And I think that's outright egregious, I'm sorry.
But I do think it's down to the partisan political divide on this. The weird faith that the left places in state action compared to obviously the skepticism that the right has about state action. And I think the right is much more justified in this regard.
Yeah. No, if I may move on a little
Yeah,
bit.
let's carry on.
If the reason why I was keen to cover this is because there's an extraordinary irony right
There
at the
is.
heart of this, which we've alluded to in part. But in the 80s, Chomsky co-wrote a book titled Manufacturing Consent with Edward Herman. The book was published, I believe, in 1988, and in the book he basically argues that the US media functions as a propaganda machine for the state for the purpose of unofficially coercing citizens into modes of behaviour that they think they have arrived at by chance. And he proceeds from here to argue that consumers should stop interacting and more specifically taking orders from these corporations, from these
Really?
monoliths, yes, on the grounds that they have a proactive role in the state's power, namely its ability to get citizens to toe the line. And he even, with Herman, produced this wonderful quote here, which I will delightfully read out.
Yeah.
The mass media serve as a system for communicating messages and symbols to the general populace. It is their function to amuse, entertain, and inform, and to inculcate individuals with the values, beliefs, and codes of behaviour that will integrate them into the institutional structures of the larger society. In a world of concentrated wealth and major conflicts of class interest, to fulfil this role requires systematic propaganda.
And if I'd known we were going to cover this, I would have got the clip we played the other day of the American media being bought by Pfizer. There was a compilation going around Twitter where it would just be Nightline on NBC, brought to you by Pfizer, and then the next one brought to you by Pfizer, and it's like, right, so the drugs companies have bought the media.
Yeah, and on these precise grounds, you would think, given that capital is quite clearly a motivating factor here,
Obviously.
that Chomsky would have a considerable problem with the media mobilising around...
He would at least be vaguely skeptical about this.
Yeah.
I don't know, the problem isn't the media and the corporations who are buying the media up. The problem is with you people who are skeptical of the media.
This is where Chomsky would interject and say, I smell a rat here.
Yeah.
What's going on?
How could he not?
Yes.
How could he not?
Yeah. Shall we have a look at some of these articles? Let's have a look at the first one. Vaccine passport apps could help us return to normal. First, they need to solve the trust problem.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yes, probably more than likely. This article basically is focused on dealing with the problem of trust issues, namely how to get citizens signed up to these passports without them becoming suspicious as to how their data is going to be used.
Oh, really?
Pretty much.
I mean, in the example of the Scottish government's app, it turned out they were sharing it with like Amazon and various other private companies.
Yeah.
So your data isn't private, and don't ever think that it is, because it's never going to be private.
No. It seems to present this tech race, I suppose, to provide this technology to the government for the resources of these passports to work as a positive thing for society at large, and it doesn't really consider the ethical dimension of why this might actually be bad, which would be, you would think, where Chomsky would want to interject.
Yeah, it's right up his alley.
It's like we know it's good. We've just got to find a way to convince the public that it's good, because it is just good.
Because Pfizer say so.
Because Pfizer are saying so.
I mean, honestly, the fact that Chomsky has dropped the ball on this is embarrassing for left wingers.
I know.
Because they venerate Chomsky, and I can understand why they do. As you said, he's been very consistent on his particular lunatic left position. It's like, okay, fair enough. I can at least respect the fact that he's been consistent in these critiques. But this is just awful.
Yeah,
I'd be so embarrassed if I were a Chomsky fan.
Yeah. Well, part of me still was, for the sake that he was being true to his convictions, but that I'm afraid is waning.
Yeah, I feel the same about him like I do about Zizek. It's like, I don't agree with their politics, but I kind of like them because they're at least sticking it.
Exactly.
Sticking to it.
Yeah, exactly. That they've got balls at the very least.
Yeah. But this is just awful.
They're not just pandering to the mob, but
Chomsky's been subverted by the very media he warned us about.
Yes, precisely. And if we can get the next one up. So this one is more of an outright just slander against the right, really.
Of course it is, from the Verge.
So this is by Russell Bramdam, who says, the new mandates may inflame the persecution fantasies of the anti-vax rump, but it will save the lives of many of the same people who are resisting it. We've seen case after case of vaccine resistors changing their minds once they contract the disease, only to find it's too late. These deaths are tragic and entirely preventable. All it requires is taking the pandemic seriously.
Thank you for that advocacy of tyranny, Russell.
Yes.
Don't ostracize me, bro.
Yeah. And he says before this, this funny enough, what was it? No, it's not made by Pfizer. I thought I'd just caught gold then. But he basically says that hospitals across the country continue to be overwhelmed by new flood of cases. It's driven by people who refuse to be vaccinated, and political leaders should use every available power to end this nightmare. That's exactly what Biden is doing.
And just to be clear, that's not true. Again, the segment we did yesterday, it turned out that 40% of Maryland hospitals were vaccinated people. Again, doesn't prevent you from, it's not categoric. You will not get sick from COVID if you get vaccinated.
No, it's not, and they know this living well.
And so they're again manufacturing.
This has a very, very specific function. This message,
yes,
and it is this. Your basic what's essentially being said is you're not taking the pandemic seriously. In not getting the vaccine, you are overwhelming hospitals. In not getting the vaccine, you are causing people to die. And most significantly, in not getting the vaccine, the government has every right to use every power that it has to force you to toe the line, effectively. And rather than to stick to his convictions regrettably, his anti-authoritarian and anti-interventionist convictions, some of which are still appealing to a point, Chomsky has become a very, very part of the propaganda machine of manufactured consent.
He has.
I mean, if anything, it would be. It's the way that he's actually almost fallen into line with the inadvertent coercion. He hasn't come out and said, mandatory vaccines.
No,
because that would almost be a token sign that dementia's finally caught up on him. And no one would take that as a serious Chomsky position.
No.
But to arrive at the position that is so familiar to the one that he's criticised so consistently is what makes this a real tragedy.
To have fallen victim to the very, big media complex that he spent his career criticising and resisting is an embarrassment. I actually feel sorry for him, to be honest.
No, it really is. And I'm almost inclined to give him an opportunity to actually rethink this.
Well, sure. I mean, he can at any point be like, hang on a second. Do I really think that for Pfizer's profits, we need to start persecuting people who might have legitimate concerns about the vaccine? No, it is the unvaccinated who are wrong. No, he could change his position at any time, obviously, but that is just mad. Absolutely mad.
I know. Death of a Titan.
Yeah. You die young or see yourself live long enough to become the villain, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full thing at 1 p.m. every weekday at lotuseaters.com, or you can sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff. Every week we have a Contemplations and Epochs episode that goes up, and in the Contemplations we talk about just interesting things, and the Epochs episodes are probably my favourite because I love talking about history. This latest one is we're doing a bit of a series on the 100 Years' War and why England kept winning. And we've not finished it yet, and you're going to really enjoy the end of that one. But we've also got other excellent episodes that we do, like the book club. The most recent one was Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. This was about his time in Burma as a colonial officer, and when he was tasked with the shooting of a rampaging elephant. And it's really, really interesting what the circumstance of the thing was. But we also have lots of other content, such as premium articles, which have audio tracks on them for our silver and gold subscribers. And we do premium podcasts about things that we don't really feel that we can put on YouTube or have done a particularly large amount of research into. And so it's worth keeping them slightly more private. And we also do lots of very interesting interviews, such as this one with comedian Steve Hughes, which was really fascinating because I didn't expect him to be a philosopher. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, the last thing to mention is the live event content we have. So we occasionally, when we get around to it, doing our live events, and the videos from them are on the website as premium, of course, because people came to see and paid. So go and check that out. This is on the worst of critical race theory.
Yes.
And I do mean the worst.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah. So if you'd like access to all that premium content, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.